The moon, a journey into the unconscious. In the tarot, the moon card doesn't give you answers, it gives you riddles. It places you in a strange, liminal world where things aren't quite what they seem. Picture a shadowy path between two towers, where wild dogs howl at a pale sky and a lobster creeps from a mysterious pool. This isn't just spooky art, it's a symbolic map of your unconscious. The moon whispers that beneath every rational thought, there's a dream trying to speak, an instinct trying to guide you. And you're the wanderer stuck between what you know and what you're afraid to know. These towers, they're not just spooky set pieces, they're the pillars of duality. One foot in reality, the other knee-deep in illusion. And those dogs, think of them as your inner watchdogs, barking every time your ego feels threatened by the unknown. But here's the twist, they're not enemies. They're guardians of sacred gates, loyal to the psyche that dares to evolve. Like Hecate at the crossroads, they mark the threshold you must cross to meet your shadow, not destroy it. Now let's talk lobster, yes, that weird crustacean in the center. It's ancient, armored, crawling out of the depths like a prehistoric memory. It's the part of you that survived everything and forgot nothing. In dreams, it's the unfiltered animal self, uncomfortable but necessary. People often overlook it, yet this creature is your first step toward transformation. Just like in alchemy, it's the raw matter, the primal chaos, waiting to be redeemed and turned into gold. The moon card doesn't showcase a hero for a reason. There's no knight slaying dragons here, only you and your unconscious material. Carl Jung would say this is where the real work begins, meeting your inner mystery without a script. In real life, this moment looks like anxiety at night, resistance to change, or sudden emotional waves. That's not dysfunction, it's initiation. Read myths like Orpheus, Inanna, or even modern tales like Donnie Darko. They're not fantasy, they're instruction manuals for surviving the unknown. And that's the thing about the moon, it's not here to comfort you. It's here to enchant, disturb, and pull you deeper. But not to trap you. Its light is dim, yes, but deliberate. It asks you to see with more than your eyes, to sense what lies beneath the surface. It's in this dim glow that the next phase of the journey begins, when the ego starts to crumble and the soul starts to whisper, quietly calling you into a darker forest still waiting ahead. The hero's journey through darkness. The real hero isn't the one charging into battle with a sword, it's the one who dares to walk blind into their own darkness. The moon card in tarot signals that terrifying but sacred descent, the dark night of the soul. It's a place where the ego loses its crown and the heart begins to feel instead of control. Picture Jonah inside the belly of the whale, or Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane. These stories don't glorify strength, they teach surrender. The path to light begins in shadow, and the hero learns that not knowing is part of becoming. Here, rational thought is stripped away. You're left with instinct, emotion, and the faintest whisper of intuition. And that's exactly where transformation starts. This stage isn't about action, it's about endurance. In real life, it might look like a spiritual crisis, a depressive episode, or a feeling that everything you believed has collapsed. You can't fake your way out of it. You sit with it. You breathe through it. Read Viktor Frankl or St. John of the Cross if you need companionship in that dark place. They walked this path before you. It's easy to glamorize transformation, but this is the messy part. The moon shows us that growth isn't a straight line, it spirals inward. It returns us to forgotten wounds, repressed fears, and abandoned dreams. This descent strips away false identity. The more you cling, the more it hurts. But let go, and that's when something miraculous happens. The descent becomes a rite of passage. You're not just breaking, you're shedding. And what's being revealed is something far more authentic than anything ego ever built. Think of it like emotional composting. All the pain, fear, confusion, it doesn't disappear. It gets recycled. It becomes the soil where new life grows. Carl Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating what was hidden. And make no mistake, the unconscious isn't just darkness. It's where your soul keeps its secrets. The moon isn't your enemy. It's your invitation to dive deep enough to find what you lost along the way. So what happens when you stop fighting the darkness and start listening to it? That's where the inner companions appear, not as monsters, but as misunderstood guides. You begin to recognize the voice of instinct, the value of emotion, and the strength of silence. This is where the dogs and the lobster start to speak, not in words, but in symbols. And once you begin to hear them, you'll understand why the next part of the journey can only be made together. Instinct, animal companions, and integration. Let's get real, those barking dogs in the moon card. They're not just there for ambience. They're archetypal symbols of instinct, loyalty, and the wild nature you try to keep on a leash. But in the realm of the unconscious, instinct isn't something to repress, it's a compass. These creatures guard the threshold between worlds, and like the twin sphinxes of the chariot, they can either drag you into chaos or carry you toward insight. It all depends on whether you fight them or listen. Integration is the name of the game. This isn't about slaying your inner beasts. It's about feeding them, walking beside them, and letting them show you where the bones are buried. Shadow work, in Jungian terms, means exactly that, befriending the parts of you society told you to ignore. Fear, desire, rage, longing, none of them are evil. They're misunderstood. It's like taming a wolf. Respect it, understand it, and it'll protect you. Reject it, and one day it'll bite. Now about that lobster, strange choice, right? But think about it. It crawls out of the water, armored in ancient memory, bearing the weight of evolution on its back. It's awkward, yes, but it's also timeless. In dreams, such a figure often represents what's most alien in ourselves, the part we'd rather hide. Yet in alchemy, the grotesque always precedes the gold. You don't get spiritual growth without wading through your psychic mud. And that lobster? That's your reminder that resilience doesn't have to be pretty to be powerful. Try this. Next time you feel overwhelmed by emotion or confused by a dream, don't rush to fix it. Sit with it. Sketch it. Journal about it. Ask, what are you trying to show me? That's how you dialogue with the dogs and the lobster, through creative ritual, stillness, and emotional honesty. It's not analysis, it's presence. Tarot doesn't give you answers, it initiates you into the mystery. And so, as the barking subsides and the lobster stares back, you begin to realize something. You're not alone. These inner companions are parts of your own psyche, asking to come home. They're not trying to derail you, they're trying to evolve with you. And once you get that, you're ready to walk deeper into the mythic forest where gods and monsters share the same moonlight. Mythological and alchemical parallels. The moon isn't just a card, it's a myth in motion, a ritual in slow burn. Its imagery pulls directly from the oldest stories humanity ever told, Greek mythology, biblical archetypes, and the sacred science of alchemy. Look at Hecate, goddess of the crossroads and moonlight, guiding souls between worlds. Or Cerberus, the three-headed hound guarding the underworld, an echo of those barking dogs. These aren't just spooky symbols, they're codes. They point to the threshold between the conscious and the unconscious, the exact place where transformation begins. Alchemical language is filled with strange metaphors, nigredo, albedo, rubedo, the blackening, whitening, and reddening stages of transformation. The moon card lands us squarely in nigredo, the phase of dissolution, confusion, and psychic decomposition. But here's the twist. Without that breakdown, nothing new can be born. Just like the alchemist who works in secret by night, the seeker must embrace discomfort as the material of redemption. This is the true great work, transforming base matter, or the shadow self, into spiritual gold. Even the Bible isn't shy about this terrain. Jonah in the belly of the whale isn't a punishment, it's a pause. A descent into silence so deep it cracks the ego open. Think of it next time you're forced into a break you didn't ask for. Maybe burnout, maybe heartbreak, maybe a loss that shakes your worldview. That's Jonah's whale. And like the alchemist or the mythic hero, you're being cooked from the inside out. What emerges after that? Not a return to who you were, but the unveiling of who you truly are. The moon's landscape is more than symbolic, it's practical. You don't need a philosopher's stone or an ancient temple to engage with it. Start with your dreams. Keep a journal by your bed. Study symbols, work with guided imagery, or meditate during the full moon. Engage with myth not as entertainment, but as instruction. You'll start to notice how the same ancient storylines play out in your life, just with different costumes. And suddenly, the chaos starts to feel more like choreography. So as the moonlight filters through centuries of archetypes, alchemical metaphors, and spiritual quests, something within begins to stir. The sacred task isn't to escape the darkness, but to illuminate it. And in that flickering glow, a new presence emerges, not just mythic or divine, but deeply human. A presence that looks strangely like the goddess herself. Feminine archetypes and lunar symbolism. The moon is not a gentle mother, it's a shapeshifter. Sometimes she cradles you in dreamlike peace, other times she swallows you whole. In the tarot, she embodies the paradox of the divine feminine, nurturing and terrifying, revealing and concealing. Carl Jung would call this the anima, the inner feminine of the psyche, fluid and intuitive. In mythology, she's Artemis, roaming wild and free. She's Hecate, guiding the lost through the shadows. She's Selene, ever-changing, ever-watching. She doesn't speak in words, she speaks in rhythms. Lunar symbolism teaches through cycles. Just like the phases of the moon, your inner world isn't static. You wax with insight, wane in confusion, vanish in despair, and return reborn. Western thinking loves straight lines, but the moon teaches spirals. She's not interested in arrival, she cares about return. That's why emotional setbacks often mean spiritual growth is underway. You cry, you doubt, you dream again. It's not regression, it's ritual. And the moon card? It's the sacred reminder that your evolution is anything but linear. Don't try to analyze her. The moon doesn't reveal her secrets under a microscope. She hides them in intuition, dreams, and metaphor. The more you chase her with logic, the more elusive she becomes. But surrender to her rhythm, and suddenly you'll feel her wisdom in your bones. She lives in the stillness of meditation, the chill before sleep, the ache of memory. Light a candle, read poetry, or simply walk under the moonlight. These are her rituals. She reveals herself not to the intellect, but to the heart. Memory and mystery are her currency. She rules the realm of forgotten pain and remembered magic. Ever had a song unlock an emotion you couldn't name? That's the moon working through you. She animates your dreams, resurrects your grief, and teaches you how to feel fully without needing to understand completely. That's her power, and also her challenge. Can you stand in the presence of mystery without needing to solve it? Because once you do, something subtle begins to shift. You start recognizing the sacred in your own emotional chaos. You sense that what was once unbearable is now meaningful. And just as your awareness starts to blossom, you feel a strange affinity with something ancient, armored, and slowly crawling up from the depths, something that's been waiting for your empathy all along. The inner transformation and empathy with the lobster. At first glance, the lobster in the moon card feels bizarre, even laughable. But in the language of dreams and tarot, absurdity is sacred. This armored creature crawling from the water is no accident, it's an invitation. It represents the primal, ancient self that predates language, before you were told who to be. Carl Jung might call it a messenger from the depths of the unconscious, rising to confront you with parts of yourself you've buried under shame or sophistication. It's awkward, yes, but it's also honest. This is where empathy becomes a mystical tool. The lobster, often misunderstood or dismissed, mirrors your own fear of being seen in your rawest form. And when the hero finally stops recoiling in disgust and instead feels compassion for this alien part of himself, true transformation begins. It's not about fixing, taming, or transcending, it's about witnessing. Think about that friend you judged until you learned their story. Now do that with yourself. What if your weirdness was actually your wisdom trying to get through? Spiritual permanence doesn't come from floating above your instincts, it comes from integrating them. The lobster teaches us that what's uncomfortable is often what endures. Its resilience isn't flashy. It survives through adaptation, not domination. Just like you do in your quietest victories. Forgiving someone without apology, trusting your intuition despite doubt, showing up even when you're terrified. These are lobster moments, slow, armored, ancient, sacred. To cultivate this inner empathy, begin with the parts of you that make you cringe. The envy, the fear, the old habits you thought you'd outgrown. Sit with them. Don't moralize, observe. Journal like you're interviewing a forgotten part of yourself. Ask, what do you want? What have I ignored? When you stop trying to exile your inner lobster and start asking it questions, you become something alchemists revered, a reconciler of opposites, a being strong enough to hold contradiction without collapsing. And as you watch this strange creature rise with moonlight dripping from its shell, you realize it's not here to haunt you. It's here to evolve with you. Suddenly, you don't fear it anymore. You relate. And in that moment of identification, a new mode of perception unlocks, one guided not by intellect, but by imagination. The power of imagination and intuition over intellect. It's tempting to think that if you just understood more, you'd feel better. But the moon laughs at that. She teaches that not all things can be solved, they must be sensed. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That's not just poetic, it's practical. In the moon's world, imagination and intuition aren't distractions from truth. They're the tools you need to touch it. You don't analyze a dream to death, you live with it until it speaks. The rational mind wants clarity, linear answers, and data. But the lunar realm plays by different rules. It speaks in dreams, symbols, and strange emotional weather. Try to force it into a spreadsheet, and it vanishes. But engage it like an artist, a poet, or a mystic. Suddenly, you're in conversation with your own soul. Tarot itself is structured around this language, intuitive pattern recognition, symbolic wisdom, and inner vision. It's not about predicting the future, it's about reading the present with sacred eyes. This is why creative practices are more than hobbies, they're portals. Writing poetry, painting without a plan, dancing in candlelight, all of it opens the channels intuition flows through. You don't have to be good at it, you just have to show up. Jung called this active imagination, allowing unconscious material to speak through creative expression. So if you want to understand yourself, don't just read another book. Try making something. Let your soul speak first, then interpret later. We live in a culture addicted to facts and allergic to feelings. But the moon insists, truth isn't always logical. It's visceral. It's the lump in your throat, the shiver before sleep, the vision you had as a kid that never quite left you. Intuition doesn't need to be proven, it needs to be trusted. And when you begin to treat your inner voice with respect instead of suspicion, you'll notice something wild. It's been right far more often than you thought. So as intellect takes a back seat and imagination steps forward, the night opens in a new way. You start to feel less afraid and more curious. You begin to navigate not by maps, but by myths. And just as this inner vision sharpens, a larger cultural shadow comes into view, one that tried to colonize the very mystery we were born to remember. Modern critique of scientific exploration of the moon. When we landed on the moon in 1969, it was a triumph of human engineering, but was it a victory for the soul? The moon, once revered as goddess, oracle, and dreamkeeper, was suddenly reduced to rock and dust. In our quest to conquer, we forgot how to revere. The tarot's moon card offers a quiet protest to this. Not everything needs to be measured to be meaningful. By stripping the moon of her mythos, modern science gained data, but lost the mystery that nourishes imagination and spiritual evolution. This isn't a tirade against science, it's a call for balance. Empirical knowledge has its place, but so does symbolic insight. When you see the moon only as a sphere of mineral content and gravitational pull, you miss her as Artemis, as Hecate, as the anima within. You forget her role in guiding emotional cycles, feminine energy, sacred dreams, and the invisible world of the psyche. You trade poetry for equations and wonder for control. But wonder is where transformation begins. And it's not just about the moon, it's about how we treat the earth, the stars, and ourselves. The same consciousness that dissected the moon also drains forests, pollutes oceans, and numbs emotions. We turn sacred bodies into resources and sacred nights into data sets. The lobster becomes a lab specimen, the barking dogs are tranquilized, and the towers are replaced by algorithms. It's no surprise we feel spiritually starved. We stopped listening to the symbolic world that once fed our souls. So how do we reclaim it? Start with reverence. Speak to the moon as if she were listening. Practice rituals under her phases. Explore her symbolism in tarot, in mythology, in your dreams. Read Clarissa Pinkola Estes, or work with your lunar chart in astrology. Let the moon be a teacher again, not of facts, but of feeling. Not of conquest, but of connection. In doing so, you not only restore her dignity, you restore your own. Because the moment you treat the moon as sacred, she reveals a wisdom no telescope will ever capture. And in that revelation, you begin to see how the fool's journey doesn't end with reaching the moon, but with remembering how to dance in her light. Spiritual insight from tarot and celestial imagery. The moon doesn't stand alone in the tarot's cosmic symphony. It dances with the Fool and the Strength card in a subtle but powerful harmony. The Fool, with his innocent gaze turned skyward, doesn't fear the moon's shadows. He walks straight into them, guided by trust rather than certainty. And that's the point. Spiritual growth isn't about mastering information. It's about surrendering to transformation. The moon tests that surrender. She clouds the path, blurs the edges, and waits to see if you'll still move forward. The Strength card offers a clue. There we see a figure taming a lion, not by force, but by presence, compassion, and courage. That's what the moon demands, too. She brings up the primal, the instinctual, the shadowy, and asks, "Can you hold it without running?" The Fool shows the willingness, the Strength card shows the capacity, and the moon tests the integration. Together, they form a spiritual triad, a guide through emotional chaos, archetypal tension, and the alchemy of the self. It's easy to get caught in the aesthetics of tarot, pretty cards, fun spreads, quirky readings. But beneath all that is a psychological architecture. Each card is a mirror of a stage in the psyche's evolution. The moon is the initiation into mystery. The Fool is the leap of faith. Strength is the inner fortitude to embody your transformation. When read together, they form not a story, but a spiritual equation. Innocence plus mystery and compassion equals conscious awakening. If you want to embody this in real life, start by pulling those 3 cards together in a reading. Ask, where am I being invited to trust? Where am I resisting mystery? Where can I show myself more compassion? Let the cards open the door to internal conversation. Let the celestial bodies above remind you that your inner world moves in orbits too. And remember, the moon's wisdom isn't something you understand. It's something you become. So, as these archetypes swirl together, they trace a map, not to the stars, but to the self. And just ahead, the lunar terrain stretches out like a sacred scroll. But it isn't pointing toward outer space, it's guiding you inward, where the real revolution always begins. The lunar landscape as inner geography. The moon's terrain isn't just external, it's an emotional topography, a psychic map etched into the soul. Each crater, each shadow, each flicker of lunar light mirrors a part of your inner world. Tarot doesn't send you into outer space, it pulls you into inner space. It tells you that the greatest exploration isn't about rockets, but reflection. You don't conquer this moon, you listen to it. You trace its valleys like you'd trace your own emotional scars, with reverence, not resistance. This is where mysticism and psychology meet. The moon becomes less about illusion and more about inner truth, hidden beneath layers of ego and fear. The towers? Your mental constructs. The dogs? Your instincts. The lobster? Your ancestral memory rising to be seen. Every element of the card reflects a dynamic within your psyche. Every curve of the landscape a forgotten feeling, an unmet need, a story waiting to be rewritten. And you're the cartographer of this invisible world. Real healing begins when you stop seeing discomfort as a problem and start seeing it as a path. The moon guides you not to avoid the darkness, but to walk it with presence. It's not about getting rid of fear, it's about hearing what it has to say. That anxiety before a big change? That's the barking, that strange dream you can't shake. That's the lobster crawling up, that resistance to let go. That's the tower trying to hold its shape. Everything is speaking if you learn to read the map. You don't need a therapist's couch or a shaman's drum to walk this terrain, though both can help. Sometimes it starts with just sitting in silence, walking at night, meditating by candlelight, asking questions without demanding answers, letting your imagination paint the geography of your soul. The moon teaches that inner growth isn't about speed, it's about depth. And the deeper you go, the more you realize that transcendence doesn't mean escaping life, it means feeling it fully. And as the lunar landscape unfolds within, you stand at the edge of something vast and sacred. Not a finish line, but a doorway. The mystery doesn't end, it expands. And you begin to see that the journey through the moon wasn't about finding light at the end of the tunnel. It was about discovering the light inside the tunnel all along.